Hey everybody, this is Ken Klippenstein with TYTI Investigates. I'm here to talk to you today about the fact that FedEx paid $0 in federal taxes this past year. This fact was published by the New York Times in a really interesting story that I linked to in the article description. The reason I think this is important is because when corporations don't pay their taxes, we do. Or services are cut. One of those two things happens, and that should be of great interest to the public. I wish the media would focus on these things more. I'm grateful the New York Times did in this instance, but let me go over some of the details for you. So interestingly, in fiscal year 2017, FedEx owed over $1.5 billion in taxes. That was just obviously 2 years ago. And then by 2018 fiscal year, FedEx owed nothing. What happened? Obviously, they were paying, some. You could debate too much or too little prior. Now they're paying nothing. That's a pretty dramatic change. So it turns out, according to this New York Times article, FedEx had a lobbying blitz wherein they really pushed the administration and government to lower corporate taxes. And lo and behold, they lowered corporate taxes. I think that this constitutes legal bribery in the sense that, these extraordinarily powerful and wealthy corporations can literally lobby the government on policies that directly affect them, as well as the general public. Again, if you don't have tax dollars, you can't run the basic functions of a society, roads, schools, that kind of thing. So it was almost, it looks like it was, pay to play. You get, again, a legal form of it. I'm not alleging anything illegal. But if you look at the way that the article describes how FedEx went about achieving these lower taxes, it's really interesting. So they had then CEO Frederick Smith. He actually went on a radio show hosted by Larry Kudlow. You might recognize that name. That's the person Trump appointed to be his chairman of the National Economic Council. And on that radio show, CEO of FedEx said, quote, "If you make the United States a better place to invest, there is no question in my mind that we would see a renaissance of capital investment." Well, fast forward a year later, do we get that renaissance of capital investment? Of course not. As Cenk always says, of course not. They just pocketed the money, as far as we can tell. And that's what any sensible person who's familiar with these sort of claims would think. I mean, it makes sense to me that he would claim that all these great things are going to happen because he wants the corporate tax cuts. But that doesn't mean they're going to happen. He's just telling tales. But that's amazing to me that he was actually interviewed by the person that would later become a Trump administration official. It's a really nice illustration of the coziness that mega corporations have with government generally. And that didn't start with Trump, but it certainly accelerated. So let me go over some of the other details, which I think are pretty interesting. A lot of FedEx's savings actually have gone directly to shareholders, the money that they saved in the tax cuts that we were told was going to redound to us. So as of fiscal year 2019, FedEx actually spent over $2 billion on stock buybacks, which increases the value of the stock and helps their shareholders. That was up from $1.6 billion in 2018, so that's a $0.4 billion increase for a number that already wasn't enormously high, relatively speaking. And then more than double the amount of these stock buybacks that increased the value of the stock happened in 2018 than in 2017, which is huge. They doubled the amount that they're pouring and pumping into the stocks to inflate the value of their assets that then goes to their rich shareholders. Again, legal bribery. They give the government money. The government gives them favorable treatment. The wealthy shareholders benefit. Who doesn't benefit is us, because our government doesn't have the resources it needs to fund not just Medicare for all or free college, but basic stuff like roads, schools, hospitals, etc. Again, this affects all of us. This isn't just some complex thing that's individualized to certain corporations. So I hope that people start to wake up to this and care about it. And what's sad about this example is you might read it and think, oh my God, this is shocking. FedEx did that? This is completely typical of other big corporations. The New York Times article says that there's a great study by the Institute on Taxation Policy and Economic Policy, which I linked to in the article description, that describes how 60 Fortune 500 companies, these are the biggest companies in the country, many in the world, 60 of these companies avoided paying any federal income tax in 2018 after Trump's tax law was passed. So this is the norm now. And it wasn't great before, but it's gotten worse. So don't think that FedEx is some sort of outlier, that they're a bad apple, as they like to say. This is across the board a standard practice, and the companies that aren't doing it are trying to get to zero. And so there was another interesting study that found that companies that make up the S&P 500 index, you'll hear about that if you ever watch or read financial papers. It's like the big stock market, probably the biggest stock market index, maybe other than Dow. They had an an effective tax rate of 18% in 2018. That was down from 25.9% in 2016. So their taxes went down by, I'm just doing the math here. That's almost 10% that their taxes went down by, which is astonishing because the taxes were already extremely low under Obama. You can look at the historical figures. They've been down for the last 30 or 40 years. It's just that it's reaching a nadir now. And in the first quarter of 2018, when Trump's tax cuts took effect, companies have spent nearly 3 times as much on more stock buybacks that I mentioned before, pumping money into their stocks to increase the value for shareholders. You can see all of this again in the Institute on Taxation Policy and Economic Policy study that I linked to in the article description. And I just want to close this before I take questions with a kind of amusing anecdote. So when the New York Times published this, which I was surprised, I don't think it comes in any surprise to people that New York Times tends to be, pretty cautious, fairly establishment. They don't go way out there on activist stuff. The FedEx CEO that I mentioned, or the current FedEx CEO, threw a tantrum and went on line and said, quote, "I hereby challenge A.G. Sulzberger, the publisher of the New York Times and the business section editor, to a public debate in Washington, D.C. with me, which I think is hilarious for a number of reasons. Because if, first of all, they had that debate, it would basically go, here's why I don't think I should pay taxes. And then the other person saying, here's why we have taxes for a functioning society. We don't just, live in the jungle anymore. We have collective resources that we put together so that we can, survive and have what we want. But just the idea that he thinks he's entitled to have, a newspaper doing journalism that it should be doing, to go up in a lectern and have some kind of formal debate. The guy's a reporter. He's not, government official. This isn't his constituent. That sense of entitlement, I think, is just hilarious and very telling about this corporate class. It's the same group that, I don't think it's surprising that someone who thinks he shouldn't have to pay any taxes in a country where, the government has helped them. They have employees that, need social services. It's not surprising to me that someone would, both think, I don't owe this country anything. I'm going to, get what's mine, forget everybody else. Not surprising to me that person also thinks that, oh, by the way, this guy owes me a debate because he wrote something I didn't like. So mind-boggling, amusing that he's so angry about it, because I don't think you're asking for debates unless you're really upset about about how the story went and how it made you look. But there's an easy way to solve that. It's start paying taxes. Maybe people won't hate you anymore.